We're good? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the second in our series of live information sessions where we talk about some of our fall planning procedures. I'm Nick Alajakis. I'm the Director of Communications and Chief of Staff for Waukegan Public Schools. And with me today is Mr. Eduardo Cesario, our Deputy Superintendent. Today we're going to be speaking about some of our plans for the fall, which we unveiled last week. This is information that a lot of you should have already received via email, via text. It's also on our website. And we're just going to run through that a little bit. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Cesario real quick to introduce himself and talk to you a little bit about what he's going to be discussing today.
Hello, my name is Eduardo Cesario. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Academic Supports and Programs for the Waukegan Public School District 60. Today we are just going to provide an overview of the fall plan for WPS 60, and want to make sure that we emphasize this. This is a plan that we're working towards to keep employees and students healthy and safe in an equitable learning environment for all.
Okay. So then we're going to have Andrew pull up our presentation. And again, this is going to be a little bit of a shortened presentation of what was given at our board meeting last Thursday, or it's a little bit shorter than what you would have received in your email. But we just want to hit a lot of the highlights before we go into the questions. We know the Q&A portion of this meeting is very important to everyone. It was something that, due to the structure of our board meeting on Thursday, we weren't able to get to. So we want to make sure we have plenty of time to questions, or 4 questions, and we know we're going to be able to get to some. We're going to be able to answer some of your questions, and others, we're going to be honest, we may not have the answer for yet, but we're going to work to get those questions and those answers. And as we continue this process of broadcasting these types of meetings and our letters and everything else that our stakeholders are receiving, we hope to be able to answer those. So we want to start with the status of Waukegan. And this slide was an important one that we had, because what it did, it gave us an opportunity to discuss and introduce what some of the realities of our community were. We knew going into this planning process that we are the largest school district in Lake County with 16,000 students. We're also a pre-K through 12 district. As a pre-K through 12 district, as a district with so many students, we have unique challenges that don't exist in other communities. So when you see plans for maybe a high school district or an elementary district or some smaller districts, we know that this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And so we have to come up with a plan that meets the unique needs of the broad, diverse range of students that we serve here in Waukegan. We also know, if you pay attention, you know that Waukegan has been hit really hard by COVID-19. The positive numbers in Waukegan are among the highest in the state. We have a large percentage of Lake County's positive numbers. And we also know that Waukegan has a large concentration of essential workers. These are, your moms and your dads who have to be at work, who don't have the option to work from home. And so going into our planning, those were our knowns. And there were, what was unknowns was sort of the community's feel. And so we want to get a little bit to our community engagement efforts. And we're not going to go over everything that we did for community engagement like we did at our meeting on Thursday. But, I just kind of want to touch on, we hit on some surveys, live video sessions like this. We did thought exchange. We did some focus groups. And so you should be seeing those shortly on your screen so you can see, some of those efforts. And we were really intentional in reaching out to our families and to our staff and to our students to get this information, because by doing these surveys, by doing these info sessions, by asking these questions, it then gave us the answers we needed to move forward and build a plan that meets the needs of our community. So what did we learn during the community engagement sessions? There's 4 things that we kind of want to touch on. One is that there's an across-the-board uneasiness about returning to the classrooms next month due to perceived health risks. We received a lot of what-if questions, what-if scenarios. And so we wanted to be really sensitive to that. And we understand that because of that, we had to be intentional in a plan to make sure that it's something that people can be comfortable with. We know there was a lot of interest in what the district is doing to create some enhanced safety measures. Our district looks a lot different, or our buildings, and our district look a lot different today than they did when we dismissed in March. If you're in our buildings, you'll see a lot more enhanced safety measures. Our operations staff has done a wonderful job of taking a lot of extra steps to keep the buildings clean, to keep the staff safe, and we'll get into some of that during our presentation. And then we also heard from some staff and some parents about wanting to see some, I guess it's more expectations to our remote learning structure, so we'll touch on that. And lastly, I know we presented a number of different plans and scenarios in some of our surveys to gauge interest, and what we found was that a hybrid model, and a hybrid model in which students would be in school every other day and then everybody would be remote learning Friday, seemed to be the most popular. And so we're able to take this information and sort of build upon it. And so now we want to kind of jump into what our fall learning plan is. We're going to go over some of the details. Before we do that, though, we want to stress the importance of impact bargaining. And so impact bargaining, it's required when working conditions are impacted. So this is something that we have to do with our bargaining units, such as our teachers union, and this is something that we're in the process of right now. And through this impact bargaining, there's likely to be some certain aspects of the plan that you're going to see in this presentation that may be tweaked. And so we're looking forward to continuing those conversations. It's an important conversation that we have to have, but we just want to be really clear about that some of the things may be tweaked, some of the things may change.
And Nick, I just want to take a minute just to say thank you to our union leadership and membership for being patient during this time with us. There's been a lot of communication, but they have been, all of our units have really been collaborative in their efforts. We're not perfect, but I think together we're really making strides to ensure that the district is ready for our students remotely, and when we get to hybrid, they'll be ready for that as well. So again, I'd like to thank all of our unions and our union membership for being patient and collaborative during this time.
All right. Thank you, Eduardo. I think that's very important. So as we want to just kind of introduce our four-stage plan, as many of you probably know by now, four-stage plan is what we're looking at. Looking to institute. And so this four-stage plan is going to gradually return students to in-person instruction as we work to meet the unique needs of our community. Each stage is going to be evaluated for its effectiveness, and decisions to move from one stage to the next are going to be based on health metrics, guidance from health experts, as well as some staffing and facility readiness that's very important to us. Each stage is going to last a minimum of 3 weeks, and no movement to the next stage will be made without a 2-week notice. Now that doesn't mean that each stage is going to last only 3 weeks. We know that some of these stages will last several weeks beyond that, and right now the only start date we know of is stage 1. We know on August 17th is when stage 1 is going to start. We're going to get into that. We don't know yet when stage 2 is going to get started. So you see we mentioned some of the metrics. Our health metrics are important. So we want to talk a little bit about what our health metrics actually are that we're going to be discussing. One of those is obviously staff or student COVID cases. You know, that's something that we hope we don't need to deal with, but as you know, we have to be realistic and know that those may occur, and so that's obviously going to be very important. We're evaluating daily the total positive cases in the Waukegan area with the 3 Waukegan zip codes that serve our district. We're also daily looking at our infection rates in Waukegan and in Lake County, and we're looking at some trends, you know, those 7-day trends to see, are we rising, are we falling? You know, we know when you look at nationally at various communities, a community could have high numbers one week, low numbers the next, then go back to high numbers. And so we're being very cautious to make sure that we're looking at Waukegan's numbers, seeing where we're seeing spikes, where we're seeing the valleys, and we're going to continue to do that as we continue to plan and move from one stage to the next. And then most importantly, we're working to take guidance and orders from the Lake County Health Department, Illinois Department of Public Health, and other health experts, both locally at a state level and even nationally. You know, health experts obviously have the best interests of individuals in mind, and so we want to make sure that we take their guidance and listen to them when they come out with new information for us. So those are the health metrics that are going to be very important to us. We're now going to go into what our 4-stage plan is, and the graphic you see on your screen, we'll keep it on there for a little bit while Mr. Sario, if you don't mind kind of running us through just really quickly kind of what those 4 stages are before we get into details on each one.
Yeah, no problem. So stage one is remote instruction for all. And so again, that would be a continuation of what current students and teachers are currently doing. Our stage two is a mix of remote instruction and in-person learning, depending on the student grade level. So this is currently what we'll refer to moving forward as a hybrid model. Our hybrid model will continue into stage three, and then it will phase in within this stage for all students with a mix of remote instruction and in-person learning. Stage four is in-person instruction for all students. And now to talk about stage one in a little bit greater detail, again, you can see the graphic up on the top right-hand corner. Again, this is remote instruction for all students, and it begins on the first day of school, Monday, August 17th, and then we'll go to a date to be determined. These dates to be determined, again, going back to the health metrics, we'll be monitoring our health metrics. We've already started to do that, and very specifically for the 3 zip codes that we serve. Lake County has many different communities in it, but we know that Waukegan was hit the hardest, and that's why we're focusing on those 3 zip codes first and foremost. On the next stage, stage two, or talking about what remote instruction will look like before we move into discussions about stage two, it will, in alignment with ISB, and ISB just came out with some new guidance last week. You'll be happy to note that in our preliminary design for the fall, that we have built some structures that are very much aligned to what the suggestions are. With this, though, I want to stress that daily attendance will be critical for all students. Students will be expected to attend daily and participate in all assigned learning activities. Students will start earning credits and grades on the first day of class. Again, first day of classes is August 17th, and attendance counts on that day, and it will count for every other day, or every day moving forward from August 17th, as well as the earning of credits and grades start that day. Yeah, Nick.
So, Mr. Sardo, can you talk a little bit, and obviously anyone who was participating in this remote learning in March, April, May knows that it's a little different. Can you touch a little bit on what those differences are and how that'll look, why that's going to be different?
Sure, and I want to preface with we're still working with the teachers union to fill in a lot of the details. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, again, the guidance from ISB is a lot more structured than what we've had previously in March. In March, it was very fluid. It was a new situation, everyone. And in alignment with what ISB had outlined, we wanted to make sure that teachers and students and parents had the ability to get acclimated to the shelter-in-place order. As we progressed through the spring into April and May, we had some greater requirements that were placed upon teachers and students. And then in the summer, we had a tighter schedule along with credit-bearing opportunities for students. We're going to use some of that as a model as we move into the fall. And again, we'll be discussing some of the finer details and working out some of those finer details with the teachers union and some of our other unions. Again, I do want to hit on this point about grading and attendance. It's really important that we need the support of parents and family members and the community at large to really support our students and get them back into the routine of attending school on a daily basis. So part of those structures is really making sure that students are logging in at the start of school. I think that's really going to be helpful for developing routines. Mm-hmm. We understand that there are some parents that may need some assistance more than others. In order to do that, we will have the tech department will be working to create more videos to help with logging in. And then again, we're always only a phone call or an email away to answer questions and to support you in any way possible. But again, if there are attendance is critical. Attendance, we need you there each and every day, students. We understand that some students will not have a Chromebook on the first day because they might be new to our district or they just might not have one. We're working right now to ensure that every student will eventually receive a Chromebook or a device. We know that's going to take some time. For those that don't, we're working on developing printed packets. Those will be available by request. We hope to have a list beforehand. Outreach and the Welcome Center are working together to create a list so that we know that we can get supplies and materials into students' hands before the first day of school. We also worked out a distribution and retrieval process so that when those students complete those packets, they can turn those in to receive feedback and a grade. Again, daily attendance is mandatory, and then grading of all assignments and assessments begins on August 17th. So how are we going to support remote instruction? We're going to continue with on-demand professional development for our staff members. We're going to be adding to this and refining what we currently offer. We're also going to provide online demonstrations and videos to support parents and students. Again, some of what I mentioned before, it might be logging into your computer, retrieving your email. It might be working on a different platform. We want to make sure that we're covering all the bases. IT right now is working on Google 101 so that you can look at, so that teachers and students have a repository of information that can help guide them as they work through the Google platform. We'll be using that to deliver instruction and for students to collaborate not only with the teacher, but with other classmates. And again, learning packets will be provided to students new to the district until they receive their district-issued Chromebooks, and we'll provide additional technology to students where needed. Stage 2, this is where we would have remote instruction for grades in students in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We'd have in-person instruction for students in pre-K, kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, as well as at-risk students. Students in these grades will attend school on Monday and Wednesday in an A shift or Tuesday and Thursday in a B shift, with all students participating in remote instruction on Fridays. This, again, is known as a hybrid plan. If you're wondering why we have certain grade levels denoted here that would stay remote, we base this on research that stated that the transmission rate is far lower with students who are 10 and younger. So that's part of the reason. So this is a recent study that was published in Emerging Infectious Diseases Journal. And we really wanted to make sure that whatever we were creating here was in alignment with the guidance from the experts in the field. So, and that's how we're right now approaching the phase-in or the stages. What students are considered at risk? At-risk students may include those with IEP and 504 plans, EL students, homeless students, and those in temporary living situations, and others that did not meet the promotion criteria in previous school year.
And Eduardo, the word may there is really important in the planning. The at-risk students does not necessarily mean that anyone in those categories would be considered at risk for the sake of stage 2, correct?
That's correct, and we say may because it may be inclusive of this list, and it may not, okay. Or there may be others who we may have students and families that that feel that they have a child that is at risk for a number of other reasons. So if we need to, we'll work case by case with admin and with families and with teachers to ensure that we are doing what we can to meet the individual needs of students. Right, in stage 3, again, our dates are to be determined, and Nick went over that a little earlier when he talked about what criteria or what statistics we were using to determine how we were going to move into the next phase or stage. And so here, this would mean in-person instruction for all grades using the hybrid model. So students would again attend in shifts on either a Monday and a Wednesday, an A shift, or a Tuesday and a Thursday and a B shift, with all students participating in remote learning on Fridays. I know another question comes up. So if the students are in the A shift and they're not in person on Tuesday, what are they doing? Well, they're still interacting and really exploring some of the skills that they were discussing in the previous day, and really practicing those and collaborating with their teacher and or other students. So a basic overview of the stage 2 and 3 hybrid plan. The benefits are reduced class size, there's full days of attendance, and when students are, again, when they're not physically in school, they're engaging in remote learning from home. We're going to have remote instruction for all of our students on Fridays, and students will be assigned to one of the 2 shifts alphabetically, with every effort being made to ensure that siblings are in the same shift. And we are going to have limited extracurricular activities. Again, we're going to base this on what our health experts in the field, what their guidance is and what their suggestions are. Additional details on our hybrid plan is we're going to use a blended learning approach. Teachers will introduce topics and skills in person, and model and differentiate supports, and then students will be given the opportunity to continue the engagement using their Chromebooks to continue research, practice skills, collaborate with classmates, and record their findings and responses to assignments.
Moving into stage 4,
This would be,
that
again,
would keep kids out of school for
that
5
would be
days,
determined
like, in a
on
row, and we didn't want to do that. So.
on our health factors and the data that we're collecting. But this would mean in-person instruction for all grades, Monday through Friday. It would most closely resemble the structure prior to school closures, and we'd have several enhanced safety and sanitation measures in place. And most of our extracurricular activities would resume. I do want to say that at any time and at any of these stages, if we have to go back to shelter in place, then we would do that. But we are looking at this and, again, trying to be as safe as possible and using real-time data to support our decision making and letting our stakeholders know well in advance that this is what's happening and this is what we're going to do. Nick, do you want to talk about
Sure.
the health and safety?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sario. So actually, we're going to start with probably one of the questions we received most, or something that was of most interest to parents, and I'm hoping, Eduardo, you could speak to it just a little bit, is those in-person alternatives. We received a lot of questions from individuals who wanted to know, what happens if I don't feel comfortable sending my child to school yet? What can I do in that stage 2, in that stage 3? And we are working on options for you, and we do want to have those options available so that parents can make the decision they feel is best for their student. And Mr. Cesario, if you could run through that just a little bit.
Sure.
Please.
We know that there are students that are at higher risk, and there are families that are at higher risk for illness, and we want to make sure that we are working with families and with students to ensure that everyone feels comfortable as we return to in-person, whether it's in the stage 2, 3, or 4. We want people to feel comfortable when they come back. And so what we will ask is for parents and guardians to notify the child's school of their intent to continue remote instruction from home, and then there will be an effort to create a plan and then review that plan with the progression of stages.
Okay. All right, and I will lead us through some of the other measures that we're putting in place and some of our other increased safety measures as well. So one first thing is our Family First Coronavirus Response Act. This is something that's very important to our staff. So staff members who are requesting ADA reasonable accommodations need to contact Human Resources Office, and those requests for accommodations are going to be considered on an individual basis. And a request must be related to a need directly impacting employees' ability to perform the expectations of their job duties. So those are for employees who are, are requesting some of these accommodations based on their ability to return to work. And speaking of, returning, one thing that's very important to us are our screenings. So for several months now in the summer, our district nurses have been wonderful about conducting wellness screenings for employees who are coming into the office. So the two of us and everybody who's in this room assisting with the production today had to go do a wellness screening in the morning where they're asking, various questions, and you're, based on any symptoms you may have, you get a temperature screening. And so what we're looking to implement are screenings for all staff and students as we move into these other stages. And they're more likely to resemble a self-certification. And so we're gathering input right now from our bargaining units, because that's really crucial in this, to figure out what will that screening process, what will that self-certification look like to ensure that our staff and our students who are entering the buildings are being safe, so that they're keeping everyone around them safe. We also have been evaluating all summer some of our quarantine protocols, and those protocols have to do with whether you're testing positive, and it sort of sets the standards for individuals based on testing, for your exposures, for your contacts, based on who you're coming in contact with, whether or not you've been exposed. And it really lays out, we have plans that really lay out the details on how many days you would need to quarantine, how many days you'd have to be away from the office, things of that. So those are things like that. So those are our quarantine protocols. In the event that we need to go beyond that, we have our impact investigations, where our lead nurses and our health coordinators they're certified contact tracers through Johns Hopkins, and they'll be working on kind of building out these investigations to determine proper next steps. So if somebody has close contact with a COVID positive individual, if somebody in our buildings tests positive for COVID-19, what are the next steps? Those are all things that this team would kind of be responsible for, and that those announcements would be coming out to the community and would be taking the proper steps in consultation of our communications department, of our human resources department, the principals in our building, our nurses, our legal department, our operations department. And so that would all be consistent with our contagious and infectious disease policies, which is policy 6034 for students, or 4201 for personnel, if anyone is interested in looking those up on our website. Next, I want to start talking a little bit about face coverings. When we return to, or when any individuals are in our buildings, whether that's staff who are in buildings now, or as we get into stage 1, 2, 3, or even 4 to some extent, there's going to be some face covering expectations. The district is going to be providing a reusable face mask to students and staff. Students and staff also have the option of providing their own to wear. And these face masks and these coverings are going to be required to be worn by individuals when they're entering our buildings and when they're in our buildings, when they're riding our bus transportation, or when they're participating in approved after-school sponsored activities. They can be removed during the time that you're eating or drinking, provided that you're properly social distanced. There will be some exceptions, and now any exceptions must be verified medical reasons, and those requests must be made to the Human Resources Office if you're a staff member, or to the school nurse for our students. Other exceptions will be for individuals under the age of 2, and when an individual is unconscious or they're having a health emergency, when obviously a mask can't be worn, or when they're participating in athletic activities consistent with guidelines of state and federal public health officials. In terms of social distancing, we're going to be following a general 6-foot rule for social distancing whenever that's practical. In an effort to accommodate this, the number of desks in our classroom are going to be reduced to ensure that they're properly spaced apart. Groups in indoor or outdoor spaces, we're going to ensure they're not exceeding the number set forth by the phase of the Restore Illinois plan that is applicable to Waukegan. And we'll make sure that those groups are following social distancing requirements. Also, during this time, the use of our playground equipment is not going to be permitted. We're also going to be taking some steps to limit student movement. So our cafeterias are not going to be used once we get into that stage 2 and 3. They're not going to be used for breakfast and lunch in an effort to promote social distancing. Instead, meals are going to be served inside of our classrooms. And no outside food is going to be permitted from students, just in an effort to reduce the amount of bodies that are kind of coming in contact and the steps that food's taken from person A to B to C until it reaches the students. We're also at our encore classes at the elementary level. We have plans to have those inside of our classrooms to reduce traffic flows. We're working with our teachers union and our staff to come up with options to limit students' movement at the middle school and the high school level, based upon those discussions. And we are having the principals creating their building-specific plans to address arrival, dismissal, and some other traffic flow within buildings. And on the topic of, that in-building traffic flow, we have created, and we're in the process of creating school occupancy plans. And those have been done with the help of some of our architects who have been working to kind of provide these unique maps for each building that and those maps have been provided to our principals, and it sort of shows like room utilization in each building, and you could see how rooms can be utilized, what sort of social distancing can occur in those rooms, how many desks, et cetera, you can have in each of these locations. So these school occupancy plans are going to be really important as we move along in the process. It's also, these plans sort of get into hallway traffic flow, student lineup during entry and dismissal. You can find water fountain locations, hand washing, hand sanitizer locations in these plans. So again, really comprehensive. Our operations department's doing a great job in creating those so that it's available to our schools along with our architects that we've been working with. And that kind of gets us into the next thing, which is enhanced sanitation measures. I mentioned it earlier about how these measures are much different than what you may have seen in our schools in March before our buildings closed. We have a lot of enhanced cleaning and disinfecting measures in consideration of recommendations from health experts. There's more deliberate efforts to clean some to clean areas such as touch points, restrooms, high traffic areas. Also, hand sanitizer dispensers are more readily available in our building. We purchased, I believe it's 1,200 additional dispensers to have outside of classrooms and in more of our hallways so that it's always readily available for individuals in our buildings. Also, individual disinfectant bottles have been purchased and are being distributed so that there's these 1,500 of these bottles in all of our classrooms and rooms and offices, and so that people can continue in some of these sanitation measures. We're also, just in an effort to take more enhanced measures, restricting water fountain usage in our buildings, except for our bottle fillers. Some of those like older water fountains that you may see in our buildings, we're going to be shutting the water off to those to encourage the use of bottle fillers. We're also going to be providing some safe water options where necessary in our buildings, some other options for people. Our operations department is also working to increase some of the air movement and filtration in occupied spaces in some of the HVAC work they're doing. And we're going to be providing for students and staff an increased opportunities for frequent hand washing during the day. One of the last places where you're going to see, or another place, but it's one of the last things we're going to be touching on, that you're going to see some changes is in transportation. When we took parent polls back in June, I believe, one of the questions we asked is how many parents are available and capable to transport their children to and from school every day. And we knew that was going to be important because the capacity on our buses has changed, and we knew that the capacity on the buses was going to change. And so just some of the things for transportation that we want to stress: one, face coverings are going to be required. The routes and the schedules are going to remain the same. Third thing, our school buses, so like the yellow buses, as you may associate them with, will have an occupancy capacity of 24, and PACE will have an occupancy capacity of 15. And we're working with PACE, so as PACE changes their rules, they change their capacity, we're going to be sure to let our families know. And then our Pay to Ride, which is a system in which individuals who maybe not qualify for a bus can pay for a bus, that's going to be suspended until stage 4, so we're not going to be offering Pay to Ride option. Last slide before we move on is signage. You're going to see a lot more signage in our buildings. The Illinois State Board of Education, Illinois Department of Public Health has done a great job of providing us a number of signs. On the screen is just some of the ones that you're going to see. And so these are going to be just those constant reminders in our hallways about, you know, proper social distancing and a lot of guidelines and best practices. And so again, we just wanted to provide everyone a shorter version of what we did on Thursday. And now we want to get into some questions. And so Mr. Cesario and I will be available to answer some questions. Mr. Kevin Kruckenberg, our Director of Operations, he's here. He's going to be able to answer some questions as well. I see some of you guys have already figured out how to do it. If you're on Facebook, you can put your questions in the chat. If you're on YouTube, you can put some questions in the comment. And so we're going to be grabbing questions from both of these platforms to answer as many as we can here. Ms. Carolina Fabian, our Family and Community Engagement Manager, is going to be reading some of those questions to us. So we hope to be able to get to as many as we can. Please be patient with us while we get some of these questions. We know that a lot of them are asking a lot of, you're asking a lot of similar questions, so we're going to definitely try to address those. And so, Ms. Fabian, if you want to get us started with our first one, we'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Also, Ms. Fabian, before we do that, and I know we've advertised this and we've let people know that we're doing the English broadcast right now. At 5:30, we're going to begin the Spanish broadcast on the same channel. So both on the same Facebook page that you're on, the same YouTube page that you're on. So just in case, if you're looking for that, so Ms. Fabian, if you want to just, if you can let our Spanish-speaking audience know that real quick, just so they know. Once it looks like we're getting some batteries in a mic for you. Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. And I'm just going to reiterate in Spanish what was stated earlier. Para los que nos están viendo transmitido ahorita, vamos a tener transmisión en vivo a las 5:30 en español. So, en YouTube y en Facebook. So, igual, si lo están viendo ahorita en Facebook o YouTube, serán las mismas páginas. Simplemente tienen que quedarse en las mismas páginas. A las 5:30 vamos a transmitir en vivo en español. And now onto the question section. One question is, will you consider changing the school structure for Monday and Tuesday with a deep cleaning on Wednesday? So that means everyone would be remote learning, and then coming back to school with the second group Thursday and Friday.
Based on not wanting kids out of school too long. So thank you, Ms. Fabian. That's a good question. That's actually something that we had discussed early on. And one of the things that we thought about, or that was brought to our attention by a few individuals, as you know, our hybrid plan would be you're attending either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday. The thought process behind that was that it kept students in school without large gaps. If you're in school Monday and Tuesday, then you wouldn't be returning to a school building again for 6 days. And so that was the thought process behind it. And Mr. Cesario, if you want to speak through, if there's anything more you want to add to that, just based on your conversations.
I think there are a lot of different models that people can use, and we arrived at this for precisely the reason that Nick just outlined, is that we didn't want students to be out of school for an extended period of time. So there is an opportunity to do deep cleans Friday and over the weekend. But right now, what we have is when we go to that phase, we are hoping that it, we're using our metrics to determine the next stage. Again, it's something to consider. But we're gonna look at the data, and this is what we have right now. We want to make sure that we're consistent.
And Mr. Kruckenberg, our Director of Operations, he's in the room here, and I think he's mic'd up too. So you're not gonna be able to see him, but Kevin, if you could talk a little bit about what some of that extra cleaning efforts will look like and what people can expect in the buildings.
Thank you, Nick. People can expect that every night the rooms will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected before the next group of students show up the following day. There's also an intense cleaning that is expected every week. The touch points are going to be very closely watched by shifting some of our staff from nights to days to help with the continuous cleanup. We're going to be putting in some isolation panels to help protect staff and the public from the staff at our offices and reception areas. We intend to have social distancing markings across our lobbies and to our offices to also help people stay away from some of our touch points so that we can maintain cleanliness everywhere.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. A lot of the questions are regarding to scheduling. What will the online schedule look like? And then how will the middle schoolers and high schoolers receive their schedules or know what classes they are taking?
So we're still working on the schedules as we speak. So principals are working with teachers, and this was a conversation that just came up recently, and so we want to make sure that we have those out by the 12th, but we're really working diligently to get it out as soon as possible. I just want to make this note too, and that I understand the urgency around this. We're doing our best to move forward with something that is completely new to us, and it's taking us a little bit longer. Had this been a normal entry and the pandemic wasn't here, a lot of the schedules and a lot of people would already know who their teachers were. And I know it's even more urgent considering the fact that our start time is earlier this year. But we will have it, we hope that everyone has it before, obviously before the first day of school, but we would like to have it by August 12th as the cutoff. But that is something that we're currently working on.
And along those same lines, will there be an opportunity for teachers, parents, and students to meet virtually before school?
That's something else that we're building into our schedule. That first week, we'd like it to be a social emotional learning week where students get to meet their teachers one-on-one. These are still things that we're working out the details with the union, but that was one of the ideas that was proposed. We used it during summer school, and the folks who worked summer school felt it was beneficial. So that is something that we want to do. I know that there are a lot of parents and teachers parents and students that would like to meet their teachers in person, and that's also come up. Right now, we don't feel that that's the best option. We feel like staying virtual and doing one-on-ones like that would probably be in the best interest of everyone. So we'll have some more information as we move forward. And again, to reiterate a point that Nick made earlier, we're going to try to do this as much as possible, at least once a week until and through the beginning of the year, so that we can just give information. We might not necessarily do Q&As, but we will provide up-to-date information so that all of you can be informed.
Parents are looking to have their questions answered regarding school supplies. So what school supplies will be needed, and will they have to buy any school supplies even though we are doing remote learning?
Carolina, I think that's a wonderful opportunity for you to share some information about this. We just talked about this today.
Absolutely.
I think we're really fortunate that we did order some materials, so we're prepared to provide our students with both school supplies and then materials related specifically to curriculum. But I'm going to let Carolina talk a little bit more about the generosity of some of our community partners and some of our community members as well. So, Carolina?
So we do have a lot of donations coming in from different partners, as stated, such as Southwire. We have a couple different churches also donating, some individuals who have been contributing throughout the years, such as Ty Harris and his wife. So we really do thank our community partners and all of those who have been donating to the Waukegan Public Schools Foundation, as that is also online for accepting donations in order to purchase backpacks and school supplies for students. So currently, we have been able to secure a lot of inventory, a lot of school supplies. Students will need, at least at the elementary level, basic school supplies such as crayons, scissors, glue, pencils, things of that nature. And we are working to ensure that we can supply those for our students. And distribution still has to be worked out. That's something that will come later on. But I understand the anticipation to be ready for the first day of school. We're working on it now. And if anyone would like to also contribute, again, you can go to the Waukegan Public Schools Foundation Facebook page, and there is a link there if you would also like to donate or reaching out to me directly.
Thanks. And just a word about distribution. I think there's been a great collaboration between teaching and learning and IT and the FACE department and outreach to really work out specific distribution plans. And so where I believe there's some discussion with outreach and operations to identify additional sites, not only to store materials for the fall, but also to increase the places where we distribute, so it's easier for families to come to different sites that might be closer to their homes across the district.
Sports. So they would like to know, will there be any fall sports?
I would really hope that there would be fall sports. Our fingers are crossed, and I mean that sincerely. However, we are going to be consistent with what it is that we're doing in terms of taking efforts to be as safe as possible. So we will follow the guidance that IHSA puts out specifically to our region and our area. And then we will consult with our team to make sure that we are making the best decision possible. We don't take it lightly. We know that it's a great opportunity for all of our students, and it's something that we all enjoy. But safety is paramount, not only for our student athletes, but also for our community members and our families.
And I believe, Eduardo, some guidance from IHSA and some announcements is expected later this week. I think it's Wednesday. The 29th is the date I've heard, or at least that's the date that was floated around previously. So sometime this week, I think, both athletes here in Waukegan and statewide can be expecting some announcement from the Illinois High School Sports Association on that.
Thank you. And then will pre-K also be receiving technology?
That is something that we're working on right now. Actually, that's a wonderful question. We're working on identifying if there are any existing iPads or Chromebooks. I also want to remind everyone that when we're talking about pre-K and kindergarten, that it's developmentally appropriate for those students to only be on devices for a limited amount of time. So we're not going to have those students should not be on for more than probably an hour a day. However, we do know that it's important for these students to have iPads and technology so that they can learn and engage with skill building as well. So we are currently working on that. We are working on first an inventory and second developing a list of what might be most appropriate for those grade levels to interact with.
And then lunch. So there are some concerns about lunches, so free meals, if we can remind everyone about the
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
free meals.
So as we currently in the summer and as we move forward into stage one, we are going to continue our meal distribution process that we've been doing for several months now. And that is every Tuesday and Thursday, we have 117 locations in town where children under the age of 18 can come and receive breakfast and lunch for several days. We've served nearly 700,000 meals over the past several months through this process, And on our website, if you're not familiar with where the nearest location is to you, you can find it on our website. We have all 117 of those spots kind of charted out, and so it's really handy. So you could find this information. We encourage our families to take advantage of this. Our Transportation and Child Nutrition Department has done a fantastic job setting this up. Illinois Central, Preferred Meals, all of our partners have been wonderful in making this possible. And so again, parents are encouraged to stop by one of those 117 locations on Tuesdays and Thursdays to take advantage of these free meals, because we do realize how important a resource like that is to our community, and we're thrilled to be able to offer it.
And then teacher plan time. So with this new online platform, will teachers still have their individual plan times in order to accommodate new curriculum?
So we are trying, again, we'll have online PD that should be available on demand, but we're also trying to structure the teacher's day so that it most resembles what teachers and students would experience if they were in person. Our hope is that we eventually transition it in person at some point in the year when it's safe. And so we want to make that transition as smooth as possible. So with that being said, we want to have those schedules, the time of day in which activities occur to be similar to what teachers and students would experience in person. So in terms of the preparation, again, that's something that we're going to be discussing with the union, but we're going to follow all of the current, agreed upon times that teachers have to collaborate and to plan.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to, the comments are coming in so quickly, but I think everybody's kind of responding to each other at this point. And I think you've answered several of the questions. One of them is masks. What about students who, once we get into stage 2 and 3, do not want to wear a mask?
I think it's something that we have to emphasize. This is a collaborative effort with families, with the district, and with all of the employees here in WPS 60. We have to model the expectation by ensuring that we're wearing it when we're supposed to be wearing our masks, and then having discussions with students about why it's so important to do so. That's first and foremost, is that we want to reiterate that this is something that we're doing to keep us all safe, and that we encourage our families to have these conversations at home. That just like Nick shared the posters that we would see, those are things that we would want to be discussing with our students at all times. Maintain social distance, make sure that you're wearing a mask, and wash your hands frequently. And it's also something that we would expect our teachers to be reinforcing throughout the day. I think that I always like to lean on the fact that I think our students will abide by this, that our students will understand the importance of it, especially because of how impacted Waukegan has been. But I think it's important that, again, we talk about it from a standpoint of educating our young adults and our younger students about the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Not just to say you have to do it, but here, this is actually keeping us safe. It's keeping your loved ones safe. It's keeping your teachers safe. It's keeping your best friend and their family safe.
And then the other question is in regards to curriculum. Will they be using the same curriculum that they did during the school year? Is there going to be a new curriculum rolled out?
It's not a new curriculum. We're still going to be using the same programs that we've been using: everyday math, expeditionary learning, all of those ReadyGen. What we've currently been using and what we purchased, that's what we're going to continue to use. We will continue to provide some guidance and supports. The curriculum, the mapping team has been working throughout the pandemic, and so the digital platform that has been established will be there as a resource for teachers and paraprofessionals, and serve as a resource with pacing and other things. But yes, that's what we'll be using.
And then along those lines, how many hours of instruction will students receive per week in the new remote learning?
So it should mirror the expectations that we currently have for in-person. However, we have to remember that the learning doesn't mean that it's the teacher giving direct instruction. So we should have per the guidance of ISB, we should have 2.5 hours of synchronous instruction, meaning per day, meaning that the teacher and the student or students and their peers are interacting at the same time regarding the same topics, right? Ideally, what I think we would see is that teachers are really, again, using this blended learning approach where they're introducing a topic, modeling that topic, provided differentiating opportunities, and then allowing students to interact with that problem or the skill and practice those on their own. And then that teacher would help with various supports based on the needs of the individual student. Again, a lot of the details have to be worked out with our union membership and making sure that everyone is comfortable with the approach that we're taking. But we also have to make sure that we're aligning what we have to ISB's expectations. They don't necessarily have to be perfectly aligned, but we do feel strongly that we should align what we have to those expectations and those guidelines, because there are some firm expectations in place regarding attendance and grades. And so what we're trying to do is support our students and support our teachers in the best way possible.
And then one question in regards to, will the district have enough sanitizing products and supplies for everyone every day to be washing their hands and keeping clean?
I think we're going to let Mr. Kuckenberg answer that question from an operational standpoint.
Yes, of course we will. We have orders placed for disinfectants, hand washing stations, and of course, good old soap. The expectation is to have all of them in place when students arrive at the schools. So that'll really be a push for stage 2.
Thank you. And then many of the questions are in regards to 504s and IEPs and how those will work during remote instruction.
Eduardo.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So many of the questions are in regards to 504s and IEPs and how those plans will work during remote instruction.
So we're going to support those students to the best of our ability in a similar fashion to how we've done it remotely. Again, there are some details that have to be worked out with our union membership, but there are rights that students retain based on those the IEP and the 504 documents, and we have a legal obligation, but we also have a moral obligation to support students with what their needs are. The supports that they get look different remotely than they do in person, and so Dr. Bublitz and his team have been working through to provide the necessary supports. And also, even when we transition a hybrid, we may have, based on what the needs are, and the risks of the health risks of students, we may have to vary our approach. So a lot of that will be on a case-by-case basis.
And then how will attendance be monitored, and who will be responsible for tracking attendance?
So the attendance will be monitored daily by the teacher. So it's really important that the student logs on. The issue that we're coming across is if a student doesn't have a device to log on to, well then we're hoping that there is an option that we can do this through their parents' phone or through a phone of their own. If that does not work, then Outreach also has a plan to phone students and families at home. And if that doesn't work, go door to door. And so that's what we're trying to do is ensure that we are capturing attendance on a daily basis. The first point of contact, if you will, is the teacher, though. It's the teacher's responsibility to take attendance.
And then there are concerns around if teachers contract COVID, will instruction continue? How will instruction continue? Will students be notified?
These are really great.
Families be notified.
Yeah, these are really great questions, and I think that when we go into a number of these scenarios, it would obviously, if a teacher contracts COVID and that person contracts it outside of the school, we'd still have to do contact tracing and other things, but we would always have remote learning as an option. Now, that teacher would not be expected to. It would be up to that teacher if they wanted to do it, continue doing it remotely. But if they're too ill, then we don't expect them to teach. We would try to provide a sub. Okay. We're still working out some of the details with the union as to what that would look like in a remote environment. And again, we can continue to ask question after question, but this is something that we've never faced before. So some of what you're asking, I don't have the answers to. I don't have all the answers, and we can go scenario by scenario. But I think right now we're trying to just really develop some really solid foundation for what we're doing moving ahead. But of course, if one of our team members, if one of our staff members is ill, we're going to do what it takes to make sure that they have what they need and that our students have what they need, and then follow the established protocols to make sure that we're doing the contact tracing and everything else that's required of us.
So just wrapping up, because I know we have another Facebook Live event. Will parents be able to opt for packets if they know that they will not be able to get their kids online during the time that's required for them to be online?
So I would strongly encourage parents, if that's an issue, I would strongly encourage parents to reach out to the teacher and the administrator to see what we can coordinate. At a minimum, I think it would be best if we could capture the attendance. So the parent might not be able to be there at that particular time. And I think capturing the attendance is really critical. If it's later in the day, then maybe we can work something out. But I think if there's a hardship, if there's something that we can work through, that's what we're going to need to work through. And again, that's why we're here. So I would reach out to a teacher and a parent. This is not, we've had this question come up before, Nick, where both parents are working and they work at they're not home during the day. And that's a reality. And that's a responsibility on our part to provide some options. And so I think it starts with the teacher and the administrator at the school and engaging them in a problem-solving process so that we can come up with something that works for you. I would far prefer to have students engage with the remote learning option, and I think that the print option that's the last effort that we would have. Yeah.
And we can take a couple more questions. We have a few moments still.
And then if there are any questions that have not been answered through the Facebook Live session, will there be a staff member going back through the questions to answer them?
So we're going to make an effort to go through and try to answer them. Now, there's more than 500 comments, and we realize they're not all questions. One thing that we encourage people to do is to contact us on our hotline. And the number to that hotline, so this is a hotline that we set up during COVID to be able to answer questions that have been coming in from our parents mainly and students and some staff, if you call 224-303-1199, we received that message. You're going to be asked to leave a voicemail. It's not a line that's manned, so you can leave it any time of the day. And we try within 24 hours to get a staff member to get back to you. So regardless of the topic, leave your question on there, leave your phone number, and we'll have somebody get back to you, hopefully within 24 hours, with an answer.
Thank you. Some of these questions are very specific, so I'm trying to get to the more general.
Sure. While you look some of those up, I know I did see some questions that were coming in about the screenings, kind of going back to that. So what we discussed, if you missed it, was once we do get back into that stage 2, stage 3, we're looking at some of maybe like self-certifications for staff and students, and we're looking at different programs and working with our bargaining units right now to see exactly what that would look like. And so a lot of times they're kind of done on cell phones, where you'd answer a couple symptom questions on your cell phone, you'd answer questions related to your temperature, and it's a self-certification process. And so obviously with students, that's something that the parents would have to do for the students. And we're still kind of going through all of that. I know this is new to us. It's obviously new to everyone across the country. And so we're hoping to have more information on that before we move into that stage 2 or stage 3, obviously, so people have that information.
And we're making adjustments as we get data and feedback. And I think that's one of the reasons why we held surveys in the focus groups and used thought exchange. So if we're not getting it right, we're going to work to get it to be better. I think that's it. And we know that we're not perfect right now, but I don't think anybody in this situation is.
It's very fluid.
Yeah.
It's extremely fluid. We would not have envisioned that this is where we'd be, back on March 13th. And so we've had to be fluid. We're very grateful that our staff has remained as fluid, that our parents have remained fluid, and that our students, have remained fluid and flexible through all of this, because it's been so incredibly important as we move forward. And really every week is bringing new challenges, and it's, new and I guess it's bringing new opportunities in a way too, to allow us to move forward and to change the way that we're instructing.
Yeah, it's offered us an opportunity to be creative, but it's also highlighted some of the work that we need to do.
And you've said a few times about the fact that remote learning and how it's going to be something that we're going to be dealing with for a long time, whether we're in a pandemic environment or not. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, and I was actually on in a forum today with superintendents and other academic leaders from across the country, and that was one of the things that I discussed, and several of the folks that were on the call actually shared the same sentiment, and that is that remote learning provides access, and that's one of the things we want to do. And just like some of what this uncovered in terms of having internet availability, and again, I said this the other day when we were in the board meeting, I really think that it's highlighted that having internet is like having almost the same as having running water. It's this idea of being without it in the 21st century really does not give you access to anything, and so it's really important that we are providing access, and we're also hearing that that we're making strides, but we've started with hotspots, but we found out that those hotspots, there are limitations with the hotspots because you can only have 5 people at a time on there. So that's given us an idea, and Dr. Cuevas is working with his team to come up with some solutions, and he'll be presenting those to the board. And even the mayor has really has a plan and has convened a group of folks to look at providing access to the community in different ways to support families and students. So I think that is a benefit or a hidden kind of outcome, an unexpected outcome of this pandemic, is that it's providing us with the ability to look at what we can do better to serve our community and our students first and foremost.
And you touched a little bit on just how much we've been able to do. I mean, not just the Chromebooks. We've been distributing thousands of Chromebooks. I think more than 4,500 or more than 4,000 at this point, beyond the ones that existed in our one-to-one situations from 6 through 12 at our elementary level, more than 4,000 Chromebooks. And we ordered earlier 500 hotspots, have distributed many of those, and now we're ordering another 500 because we realize that these Chromebooks and this technology that the families have really doesn't do them any good if they don't have that internet, the capability, like you said, to connect to the internet, to be able to access the internet with the technology that we're providing for them.
And I think that, we're not the only district that's looking at purchasing hardware in terms of hotspots and or Chromebooks. I think looking at our one-to-one, I think we've done a good job of developing to that, but now we know that we need to have devices in the hands of students, and that this is a necessity, and it can't wait. I wish we could order them today and have them tomorrow, but it doesn't work like that. We did place a big order in late spring, early May, I think. But we know that it takes time to get those orders and process them. But as soon as we process them, those computers are going out to our families.
Right, and that's important. I know some of our new families have asked that. We're working to get them that technology, and in the beginning they'll start with probably some of those paper packets until we can get them the Chromebooks. That's correct?
That's correct. I mean, it's not the most ideal option, and we realize that. But I'd rather have them have a print option than no option, and so that's where we're at right now. But again, we talked about Carolina earlier, and about how community members have really, and community partners have really stepped up with providing us with support. And that was another place where we were able to get some additional Chromebooks. So just again, want to give a shout out to the community. I think it speaks volumes about Waukegan as a whole in terms of supporting the school district.
Yeah, it's been tremendous.
Supporting their neighbors. So it's been awesome. Yep.
And then can you guys talk a little bit about the plans for the parent videos and parent sessions, so that parents know how to access their child's work, their child's grades?
Sure. I spoke a bit. I spoke about it a little earlier in our conversation, but IT is really working on those videos right now, and it's as simple as logging into your Chromebook and finding your students' login credentials to using a Google Suite. We want to do those videos for the platforms that we have. There's other News ELA, Reading A to Z, IXL, and we did get some feedback that it's really difficult to log into each of these platforms separately. I want to let you know that we take everything that you say seriously, and we look for solutions. Oftentimes those solutions take some time for us to work out. We can't get those answers the next day. I did meet today with the group, and I'm going to present this information to the board probably at the next Student Achievement. But there's a platform that really syncs all of those, the login for all of our platforms into one convenient place, so that when a student logs into their email account or they log into their Chromebook, then they're already automatically logged into their accounts. And then the teacher, that it gives the option for parents to do that from their own accounts as well. So we're still working out the details, working out some of this information, and then Dr. Cuevas will also have to vet that. But just, I guess my point is that we're always looking for solutions to some of the problems that you're presenting us. It just takes time to vet these things, and we also have to share this information with the board as well, and have that move forward in an appropriate process.
And then another suggestion was tutoring. Will the district support or have some sort of either small group in-person tutoring or virtual tutoring for those students who are struggling?
So we're going to continue with the tutoring that we've had. If we need to expand with that, that'll be another discussion, but we did have tutoring available through the shelter in place. In terms, again, going back to the comment about small group instruction in person, during remote, we're really going to try to move away from that. And actually, I will say we will not have that happen during remote instruction. We really feel that we want to honor what we're saying about adhering to these safety guidelines and the metrics that we've outlined that will tell us how safe things are. If we, again, we never want to say never, so if there's a special case and we need to speak to families and we need to make some arrangements, we'll do that. But as a general rule, we're going to try to stand by what we have. When we move into hybrid, I think that'll make it a little easier to have small group tutoring in person. But again, we're never going to say no, but we do want to make sure that we're following those safety guidelines.
Okay. Maybe we can take maybe one or two more questions. We want to wrap up here in about 3 minutes. We know a lot of you have some great questions that you have, but we have the Spanish language broadcast beginning at 5:30, and we want to make sure we have time to turn the room around and get it properly cleaned for our new staff members that'll be filling in on our spots.
Can we talk about a little bit about internet safety and what are the precautions put into place, and will teachers teach students a little bit more about internet safety?
So what was the last part of that question?
Will teachers be teaching a little bit about internet safety?
So that's a follow-up. I'll have to follow up on that to really go into detail about that. But some of what Dr. Cuevas and his team have set up, really using only GoToMeeting and only the Google suite of options is an effort to keep people and our students safe. He and his team have taken every precaution to ensure the safety of our students. I do think talking about internet safety, I know that there are some discussion, but I'm assuming that having a greater discussion about it would be helpful, and that might be something we could do during the opening week. But again, that's something we'd have to follow up on.
And then the devices do also come with some filtering programs as well, correct?
It's monitored
Yes.
regularly, yes.
So even though the devices are at home and being used at home, students' devices are still being monitored by the district and are still being filtered for content. Just want to make that clear
Yes.
for families at home. And then it seems that we're having a new curriculum in ELA at the middle school. So there's some concern about that
It's an
being
update.
new.
It's an update. It's not a new program. It's what was purchased is an update to an existing program for expeditionary learning. So it's just the updated version. I believe there are some more. It provides for a greater variety of literature that's available to teachers to use with their students, but that is not a new. It's not a new program. In terms of the information as it relates to support and programming or professional development rather, we'll have more of that information upcoming during the opening PD week.
And that was the last question, is professional development for staff. Will that still be held August
Virtually.
12th? And
Yes,
that was the question.
it will
virtually.
occur August 12th, and it will be virtual. And a portion of that will be dedicated to unveiling this remote plan in greater detail. And we hope to have details before that, but again, we're still working out the details with the union, and we want to make sure that we're getting input from our teachers, and that we're really following the concerns and that the union has. We want to make sure that we have a solid plan that's created collaboratively.
All right. Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you, Nick.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate your guys' patience while we worked through our plan, took all these questions. I want to thank the Board of Education and Superintendent Placencia for giving us the opportunity to do this platform to reach out to students and to families, to our staff. Also want to thank everyone who assisted with the broadcast today, Kamika, Hopkins Bay, Andrew Aiello, they're the ones kind of behind the scenes working the cameras, doing a wonderful job. Thank you to Ms. Fabian, Mr. Kruckenberg. Our Spanish language broadcast is going to begin in about 8 minutes. So we're going to sign off. We're going to allow everyone to kind of get set up for that. Again, we're going to be doing some more of these in the future. Stay tuned for some of that information on when we'll be doing more of these simulcasts. Thanks again for your questions. I think earlier we showed the hotline number. If you do have questions that weren't addressed, you always have the option of contacting your child's school. You could also dial the hotline, 224-303-1199. Lastly, registration. If you're new to Waukegan, you can register online. You can begin the registration process online. If you didn't have a chance to register for the school year and you're a returning family, our schools, you can start registering at our schools beginning next week. So you could, those are really simple processes now for our returning families. So again, we encourage you, get that registration done. We're looking forward to welcoming our students back on August 17th through remote instruction. So thank you again, and everyone take care.